Poplar Tent area. So this tornado warning is for northeastern Mecklenburg, northwestern Cabarrus, small section southeastern Iredell, and parts of Rowan. So it's kind of where all those counties come together. The little hook is right here near Gray Road, just to the southwest of Highway 3, north of Highway 73. This is, again, moving to the northeast. Let me show you the data here, because we'll look at the velocity data. There is some rotation there. Right there, Shearer Road is right there. This is Robert Walker Drive, so it's just north of there, east of Rocky River Road, west of Terrell Ridge Road. This is pushing east towards Columbus Street, Dogwood Drive, Odell School Road, Windy Road. Those are the areas it's heading. Patterson Farm Road as well. That's where it's heading. That rotation is right there on radar. So we're getting some rotation in that storm, similar to the storm that was ahead of it that produced all the funnel cloud reports. And actually, in that volume scan, you can see the rotation actually got a little bit stronger. So that is a much stronger rotation than we had earlier. Right now, I'm going to zoom in on the area because that rotation is just to the west of Rocky Hollow Road, Holly Trail Lane, Callaway Hills Lane, Terrell Ridge Road, and then Shearer Road. Shearer Road is right there. Odell School Road is there. So it's right there, about to cross over the county line, it looks like, going from Mecklenburg into northwest Cabarrus County. So it's right on the county line. That's that black line right in the middle of your screen. That's the county line between Mecklenburg and Cabarrus County. Again, that's the circulation right there. There's actually a little bit of a hook showing up right there, that appendage coming out. So the circulation is right there, traveling to the northeast. Let's look at the speed of this. About 10 to 15 miles per hour is the speed of this. So let's put an updated storm track on this. I'm going to put it at around 15 because I'd rather give you a heads up a little bit sooner than later. So we'll put it just a little bit quicker, but there's the storm track. So Fishertown coming at 7:38, Enochville, second warning today. This is until 7:41. Kannapolis, 7:47. Now, if it holds together and gets into Landis, that's going to be around 7:54 as it moves into Rowan County. Speaking of Kannapolis, I'm going to pull up the Kannapolis camera because we'll see what we can see from the Kannapolis area, because this is looking kind of off to the northwest. Kannapolis is right over here on the edge of the screen. This is our Mr. Sparky Carolina Camera Network up there at the Cannonballer Stadium. So we're kind of looking off to the northwest. I see on the edge some lowering dark clouds, but I don't see a lot there. That's pretty stratiform, we call it, cloud cover. We don't see any lowerings or anything that looks like it's rotating, at least right now. But that's where it's heading. It's going to be right on the Rowan-Cabarrus County line. It's honestly, it's really barely into Mecklenburg, and I would say, Iredell, you're probably safe. Even though it's pouring in Mooresville, some heavy rain, it's the southwest corner of Rowan County again, and that northwest corner of Cabarrus County. So Kannapolis to China Grove, that's the area we need to be seeking shelter right now. Notice this warning's a little bit smaller because these have been spinning up and dissipating and not really lasting all that long. This warning is up until 7:45. It's now 7:15. So this is only for 30 minutes. We're not going to have an hour-long warning like we had before. And as we've seen with the previous storms, that one weakened completely. It was the secondary storm behind it that picked up some energy and actually got spinning. So we'll look at the storms behind it as well, just to make sure none of these are showing signs of rotation. We had some sunshine out earlier, which probably helped kick that up just a little bit as it was moving northeast. But again, that's the rotation right there. It's in the northwest corner of Cabarrus County. So this line right here, this is Iredell, this is Mecklenburg, this is Cabarrus, this is Rowan over here. So we're kind of right on that border. Four counties come together. So when you see this warning for all four counties, it's not in the whole county. It's right in that little section kind of off to the north, east of Charlotte and west of Kannapolis.
Right, this is a very heavy populated area too.
Yeah.
Right near Kannapolis through China Grove. So yeah, if you're watching this, definitely, Brad will say this, find a safe place in your house. Probably give yourself more time to do that rather than less time.
Yeah, Brad had talked about finding that interior portion of your home, but also, and I love that you say this to remind us, the helmets.
Yes.
The helmets, Brad.
Something I didn't think about either.
Yeah, you grab those helmets, put them on your head. In school, you did tornado drill. What do? You cover your head with your arms. Well, it's not your arms. You just put a helmet and be a lot more efficient, right? That cell right there is a very small cell, but it's got that indication of rotation. It was kind of ironic that we were tracking the first storm, and it looked like it dissipated, and so it caught my eye immediately back there in Cornelius that, wow, that second cell had a little bit of rotation to it. And sure enough, National Weather Service was watching it closely for the structure to increase, and they did see the structure really start to pick up. And that's when we saw the warning come out. So this warning, again, is for that northeast corner of Mecklenburg, but it's really the northwestern section of Iredell into southwestern Rowan County that I'm most concerned about. That's where the rotation is. Remember, when we do the warnings, the rotation isn't the whole storm. While the storm might be affecting Mooresville, the rotation is on the southwest side of the storm. So it's going to be here north of Highway 73, east of Huntersville and Cornelius and the Davidson area, and south of Mooresville, but due west of Kannapolis, heading towards that China Grove, Kannapolis area. So 85 north, this is an area, if you got friends or family traveling on 85, they're okay now, but if they're traveling in 30 minutes or 20 minutes from now, that storm will likely be very close to I-85, and they're probably going to want to postpone their travel until this storm either dissipates or that warning expires. But the folks that need to be on guard are in China Grove, Kannapolis. I'm going to put a track on this out to the northwest, and I'll just track it to China Grove just to give you an idea. So China Grove, that would be 739. Enochville, 726, which isn't too far away. And then eventually the Westbrook area, 730. Landis, 734 as well. So that's, getting into Rowan County. You're seeing a lot more Rowan County towns and cities than you are Cabarrus, Iredell, or Mecklenburg. It's primarily heading towards Rowan County, even though you've got the 4 counties. The polygons, that purple box, that's the warning. It's essentially a storm track for this storm. The warning is only in effect for people within that polygon. So that's why the warning goes out. If your phone's going off right now, you're either in that polygon or you're hitting a cell phone tower that's in that polygon. If you're outside of it, the key is your phone shouldn't be going off right now. It should only be for the people in there so we don't overwarn. But one thing I always like to do is if you're ahead of this line, it's always a good idea to pay attention to what's happening to your southwest, because I'm going to loop this. This storm is tracking off in this direction. So if you're in Salisbury, China Grove, and Rockwell, you're not in the warning, but you need to be paying very, very close attention to the storm because it is traveling your direction. You're actually more in a risk area than somebody just maybe 3 or 4 miles behind it because that storm's already passed them. This is actually traveling your way, and things are improving back here even though the rain is picking up back in Huntersville, Cornelius, and back towards Lowesville, towards the Lake Norman area where we've seen all the funnel cloud reports today. And I also will mention a bunch of storms coming up from the south as well. These have been non-severe, but they are producing a lot of lightning and very heavy rain. The wind fields overall, what's interesting about today's setup, it is not your classic tornado setup. It is really more of a tropical downpour setup, but like we see with tropical systems sometimes, if the sun comes out in between these heavy rain bands, it can be enough instability to kick up just enough rotation that a storm can produce a funnel cloud or a brief tornado spin up. And that's what we've seen so far today. 2 separate warnings, really 3 separate warnings altogether, but 2 separate storms that have produced all the activity. The first one started way back in Lincoln County, was watching it carefully, crossed the lake. I was really suspicious of that storm the whole time. Put the word out to our spotters, and our spotters came through with pictures and videos that immediately confirmed we had a funnel cloud, which then prompted the warning. And now we've seen the second storm today, almost in the exact same area.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is important to recap kind of the history of this system, if you will. I mean, because we've had several warnings come out of this evening, and really just probably a good warning for folks just to be weather aware, because we don't really know. Well,
that was the next thing I was going to actually talk about was, in addition to the tornado threat, right, it's the rain that's being thrown down by these storms. And it's not just tonight. It's going to be the next couple of days. And we're not the only ones dealing with some bad weather. So I've seen tornadoes in Florida earlier today. So obviously we're not getting the worst of that. But it is going to be an issue with flooding. We already saw flooding warning earlier as well.
Yeah, Brad was warning us of flash flooding concerns for later in the week. And then obviously here come the tornado warnings. So that's just another layer to the Weather Aware Week.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, the flooding is probably going to impact way more people than these tornado warnings, because you could see where the rain is occurring everywhere else. And that's going to set the stage for what's going to come the next couple of days, because all this is rainfall rates in these storms are 2-3 inches an hour in some cases, which is going to saturate the ground. So any additional storms are going to cause issues. But our tornado warning, really worried about right there, that northwest corner of Cabarrus County. And I'm going to zoom in closer because if you've been watching our earlier warning, this is one of the stronger rotation couplets. So we've got the reds on there. And so what we're looking at here, this is the Doppler velocities. This is what makes Doppler radar useful for detecting tornadoes. It can tell us not only is there rain, hail, snow, sleet at certain times of the year, it can tell us which direction those things are moving. We call them hydrometeors in comparison to the radar. The radar is off on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. So the reds are winds going away from the radar. So you see that big red blob in the middle of your screen. Those are the winds going that direction. The greens are going towards the radar, so you see the greens going there. And again, if I had a pencil or a paper towel roll and my hands are going like that, the air in between them is going to rotate. And so what happens is when we see that on the radar, that's the indication that the air between those two is rotating counterclockwise. And the tighter and stronger that couplet, we call it, becomes, the more likely that there is a tornado in there. Now, that's at the radar beam height. The radar beam goes out in a straight line. Earth curves away from us, so the radar beam gets higher and higher in the sky as you get farther from the radar. So that might be detecting rotation at 800, 900 feet off the ground. Spotters come in, they tell us what's happening down on the ground, and that's what happened today, and it really helped us. And again, just looking at that rotation, is it really strong? It's much stronger than earlier. I mean, this is stronger than the storm that prompted the first warning. And just to give you an idea, the rotation there on Terrell Ridge Drive, that's 22 mile-an-hour winds going away from the radar. Over here, we don't have really strong winds, but we've got maybe 13 to 15 mile-an-hour winds. The reason it's negative, that tells us the direction. When it's going towards the radar, it reads negative. When it's going away, it reads positive. So that's why you see the negative numbers on there. It gives us a direction of that wind, not just the speed. But look at those strong winds on the east side. That bright red is an indication of pretty good rotation. So let's call out some of the streets here. Here's Earnhardt Lake Drive, right? Or Earnhardt Lake Road, excuse me. Archer Road, Rustic Road, Patterson Farm Road, Cloverfield Drive, Arrow Point Lane, and Alexander Road. If you live on any of those streets, that rotation's heading your direction. Wright Road, you're next. Tuckasegee Road up there, and then up there to the north. We'll kind of move the map so I can see that road. That looks like Unity Church Road up there as well in Rowan County, Deal Road, and then back towards Smith Road. So that rotation is going off in this direction, heading towards the northeast.
Oh, and fascinating, Brad, because you had pinpointed this about 30 minutes earlier, right? You had said, while our other warning is kind of dissipating, you were watching this specific cell, which I think is so fascinating that you kind of saw that, 30, 45 minutes ahead of time here.
Yeah, when we widen out, you could see the first storm was weakening, but that caught my eye immediately back towards Cornelius that we had that appendage or hook. So you're seeing some updates done to the warning. So when you see the double boxes there, they just updated the warning. What they did is they canceled the Mecklenburg County and part of the Iredell County line, and they shifted the warning to the east. So you're going to see this adjust here in a minute. So the new warning is up until 7:45, still the same warning. They just whittled it down a little bit. At 7:22, severe thunderstorm, capable of producing a tornado, was right there west of Kannapolis, about 4 miles northwest of Cottle Creek Reservoir, moving northeast at just 10 miles per hour. So again, very slow moving. As far as tornadic storms go, these are very slow-moving storms. Typically, on average, I would say 35 minimum, 30 mile per hour is normally what we see for a tornadic storm, and sometimes up to 50 or 60 miles an hour. To see a 10 mile per hour storm is a pretty weak storm from a movement standpoint, but the rotation there is pretty strong. Davidson Road and Vinwood Road, Kelly Ann Avenue, and Archer Road, the rotation is right over you. It is pushing northeast towards Arrow Point Lane, Patterson Road, and eventually pushing northeast up here towards Unity Church Road. So Unity Church Road in Rowan County, that's where it's heading. So if you live in these areas, you need to get to that interior room, put as many walls between you and the outside, grab that helmet, put it on your head, and stay in there until we give you the all clear. The great thing, bring your phone in. We're streaming on our app right now. We're streaming on YouTube. We're streaming on Roku, Amazon. If you have the TV on and you don't have a device, crank the volume up, get in that safe spot, and you can hear us, and we'll give you the all clear once this is away. But that green room, I highlight that, middle of the house, bathroom, closet, maybe even an interior hallway, a pantry. My house, it's the closet under the stairs. We know exactly, everyone in the house knows that's the spot to go. We clean it out and we throw our helmets in there, and we know to go in there when there's a tornado warning, and that's where you need to be. Now, if you have friends or family in that area, you can do me a huge help and call and text them and say, hey, there's a tornado warning for your area. I know this is not the warning from before because they probably heard about that one. This is a new storm which is producing rotation, and it's a secondary storm. So it's moving into Rowan County from the northwest section of Cabarrus County. Let me look at that's honestly today of all the rotation couplets, that's the strongest I've seen. It's on Odell School Road right now. Walking Horse Trail. So that's the second time that neighborhood and that road were impacted. Patterson Farm Road, and there's Arrow Point Lane. So that's the area we're talking about. And that couplet, that red-green area, those are winds going towards and away from the radar. And when we see them close together like that, we know we've got rotation right there. And again, this is stronger than the storm before, rotation-wise. So right there, this is Highway 3, which is coming out of Cabarrus County, going up into parts of Rowan, and then going into Iredell County. So that's west of Enochville. So there's Unity Church Road. Heads up, anywhere on Unity Church Road, north of Highway 3, and let's go up here, and then maybe just south of 152 on Unity Church Road, those are the people that need to be in your safe spot now because it's heading in your direction. And again, when you see the times that we're putting on the map here, when I do a storm track, give yourself some wiggle room, about 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, depending on where you're watching me, because remember, there is a delay in the stream or even your cable or satellite provider. So you're probably getting a little bit of a delay. So we'll do a track on that. I'm going to track it all the way to China Grove here. So there you go. Enochville, 745. This is if it's moving at 10 miles per hour. But again, I would go earlier than this. I'm actually going to retract that and do it at 15 because I'd rather you be in the safe spot sooner than later. So one of the things I will do is oftentimes just track it a little bit faster so that you have a little bit more heads up. We'll go out to China Grove again. So Enochville, 743. Westbrook, 747. Landis, 757, which is right there. So it's still pretty far away. When it's only moving 15 miles per hour, it's going to take a while to get there. One of the nice things about slow-moving storms, gives us more lead time. It's not moving so fast that by the time we tell you about it, the storm is upon you. You've got some time to seek shelter right now.
Speaking of which, I mean, I know we talked about getting to the safe place, and I think sometimes we assume that people know this, but let's just make it explicit so people know. Mobile homes, not a safe place.
Yeah, absolutely not. And a slow-moving storm, one of the benefits of that, as I mentioned, if you are in a mobile home, maybe over here near China Grove or Landis or Kannapolis, this gives you time to physically get in your vehicle and go to a more sturdy structure. So go to the local convenience store, grocery store, say, hey, there's a tornado warning. I live in a mobile home. I need to seek shelter here. That building's better. Or a friend or a family member that's in the vicinity. I don't want you in the car when the storm hits, but if you have time like we do in this case, you can do that because oftentimes those are not safe locations. This is traveling right towards Enochville, which is right there, and then Irish Creek Golf Club right there. So that area right there, Harmony Lane. So that's kind of where it's moving. If it continues on its track, it's going to be there any minute now. So in Enochville, just south of, it looks like that is Cannon Farm Road, that area right in there in Enochville. So on the west side of Enochville, west side of the club at Irish Creek, the Kannapolis Lake area, you know, that lake right there, that's Kannapolis Lake right there, which is on the northwest side of Kannapolis. That is the area where it's heading. So it could be heading right for the golf course there in Kannapolis Lake, just between Enochville and Kannapolis, south of Harmony Lane. And again, not seeing any damage reports is a good sign, but the fact that we have this strong rotation, definitely producing some strong winds. The storm behind it is also one you got to keep an eye on right in here. So this cell right here, but this is just south of Cornelius near Huntersville, another cell, very similar to the first one. Has some rotation, but it's in a different part of the storm, so that doesn't look like the same type of setup because that's in the middle of the precipitation. That looks more like a downburst, possibly right there. Yeah, compared to what we're seeing up here heading towards the Enochville area. So again, This is the new tornado warning that was issued after the first several ones that came through with the secondary storm. So not the same storm. This is still in effect for a very small section of Iredell County. Think about that very tiny section of Iredell County, but really most of Rowan, southwestern Rowan, and northwestern part of Cabarrus County. I want to go back to our Kannapolis camera real quickly to see if we see anything from that camera, because the one thing we noticed from before, this is at the Cannonballer Stadium, so we're looking northwest, and the sky's gotten a little darker, but I'm not seeing a whole lot going on.
Well, and Brad, can I ask? I saw somebody on social media kind of talking about if this stuff is making it to the ground. That really doesn't have any, bearing, because you still should, be getting into your safe place. It's still pretty important to heed some of these warnings, right?
Yeah, one of the things about tornadoes, the whole point is to give the warning before it happens. If you wait till it's on the ground, that's not much of a warning. So what you'll often see, and yes, there is a false alarm rate with these, because you're looking for the ingredients or the precursors of the tornado touching down to issue the warning to give people enough heads up to seek shelter. So you don't want to wait till it's on the ground, because if you're underneath it, then it's too late, right? So you want to go ahead and seek shelter now. So when we issue warnings, the National Weather Service, it's going to come from a couple different venues. Today it was from spotter reports seeing the funnel cloud, but oftentimes it's radar indicated, which is like this. We see the rotation on the radar, we see it in the mid and lower levels of the storm, and we see it descending. Because we can't see all the way to the ground, we don't know what's happening below that, but we're going to issue the warning anyways before it reaches the ground, because we can't wait for every tornado to touch down before you issue a warning, because then nobody would have a warning, right?
Right, it's too late.
Yeah. So that's the reason we do that. It's a good question, though. I mean, but it also leads to a high false alarm rate. Yeah. But it's one of those things, because they're so dangerous and because they cause so much damage, I think it's one of those things, it's an acceptable alarm rate, a false alarm rate for these that you want to have. What you don't want to have is tornadoes touch down with no warning. Those are the ones you don't want to have. So probability of detection is a number you want to have much higher, or POD we call it. So there's the Patterson Farm Road, Wright Road, heading up towards 152. So this is the southwest side of China Grove, Enochville, and Kannapolis, kind of that little triangle there, and Kannapolis Lake in the middle there with Irish Creek Golf Club right there. That is definitely the focus of this boundary today, or this little area of where we've seen rotating storms kind of moving off to the northeast. I keep looking at the storm behind, because we've seen this twice today, where the storm behind it starts spinning, and it doesn't look as strong, but there is a little hint on I-77 north of 485 of maybe a little bit of spin in those storms as well.
Obviously keeping an eye on the outages as well, which I was going to say have gone way down, Brad. They were around 400 in the Mooresville area, around 90 in Salisbury. And, Vanessa, you had kind of talked a little bit about what issues may have prompted those, but at least it's going down, so that's good news.
Yeah, and we were talking, of course, with Brad about, are we seeing damage out there? I mean, obviously we do have power outages reported, but that's not to say that it's because a tornado touched down. I mean, it could be something like, for example, we saw a car ran into some electrical equipment and took out power for a few customers. We're seeing maybe branches come into contact
straight line
with
winds,
energy
maybe.
equipment. So we'll watch them, of course. It looks like some of these restorations are going to be later this evening, maybe 10 o'clock I'm seeing for some, 10:45. That's going to be in that area of Mooresville, where we're seeing a small pocket of outages reported.
Yeah, what's interesting about that Mooresville outage, there was a tree down in that same area. So it's kind of weird. It was just one tree, which makes me think either the ground was saturated or something happened with that tree. But the thing about tornadic thunderstorms, the tornado gets the headlines, but this storm has got wind in it. It's got lightning. We've seen some small hail, not a ton of hail. This is not a really good hail setup today. It's more of a pea-sized hail setup, if anything, because it's so warm and humid out there. But you can get downburst in these storms as well, and those sometimes could bring trees down, especially on the back side of the storm. We saw that in Cherryville a couple weeks ago. That rear flank downdraft caused a huge downburst, which caused widespread damage. Even though that storm was rotating, it never produced a tornado, but the straight line winds did all the damage. Now, you always worry about that in these storms. The storm behind it in Cornelius and Huntersville, that is just as strong, it looks like. It is not producing rotation like the first storm, but there are some stronger winds in there and definitely tremendous downpours. I think the one thing that we're seeing, this is like the second or third wave of storms in the same area, and these have been putting down a couple inches of rain per hour. Now, they haven't rained for a whole hour, but the rates have been that high. So we might be starting to see some really high totals. And I just want to real quickly look at some of the rainfall. Yeah, this is what I was afraid of, looking at the rainfall totals. Look at Mooresville, 3.9 inches of rain, and some of these areas over 3 or 4 inches. So that little swath has been hit repeatedly by heavy rain. And so one thing to be cautious of out there, yeah, we got the tornado warning, but watch for rising water. We're likely going to see some flood warnings or advisories issued, and every creek and stream in this area is going to start coming up pretty quickly with all of that water coming down. And that's really the reason we wanted to just stay weather aware this week, is for the flash flooding. These tornadoes are kind of, the tornado warnings at least, I shouldn't say tornadoes, we don't have any confirmed touchdowns yet, but we do have several funnel clouds, is just these isolated cells that have been able to rotate on their own and produce enough rotation to at least produce a funnel cloud. Just a heads up on an update on this storm. It's east of Highway 3. The rotation is south of Patterson Farm Road, but west of Unity Church Road, north of Archer. So it's just crossing into Rowan County right now. It looks like it's almost into Rowan County completely. It's still on the edge of right there. I'm going to show you where the county line is here. So this is Iredell, this is Rowan, and this is Cabarrus. So once it crosses this creek right here, which is actually the county line, it's going to move from south. I mean, this is the smallest section of Iredell County could get in, that that little southeast corner between Patterson Farm Road and the county line. It's heading towards Cloverfield Drive and Unity Church Road. So it's moving out of Cabarrus, it's into southeastern Iredell, and it's about to cross into Rowan County. So it's kind of in one of those weird spots where you have, 4 counties come together, but now we've got 3 counties coming together right here, and it's kind of right on the county line of all 3 of them. So when the warning comes out for the whole county, it's not for the whole county. It's really just for this purple polygon, which you can see is pretty large, actually, taking up this big section of Mooresville, the China Grove, the Kannapolis, the Poplar Tent. But it's that corner right there, and looks like an update to the warning. We'll see if that whittles it down. They actually are just, when you see these updates come in, they just are removing parts that aren't in, they're all clear. So the new warning basically took out some of the wider areas and kind of whittled it down a little bit. This was at 7:37, so the tornado warning was for the storm that was located about 6 miles west of Kannapolis or near Enochville. It's still moving northeast at 10 miles per hour. So that's going to put it in China Grove here shortly.
I mean, you were talking a lot about all of the rain that we're getting. We've been getting some viewer videos. We had some video. We actually have it queued up right now, it looks like. But out of Cornelius, just all of the downpours. And Brad, you were talking about the problem with the training, is what you called it, training.
Yeah, when you see the same storms or series of storms move over the same spot again and again, you tend to get some flash flooding. We call it training because think about putting train tracks down, and then every car is a storm that goes over the same set of tracks. And so if you're on the tracks, you're getting 4, 5, 6 storms in a row. Eventually that rain is just going to overwhelm drainage systems, and you tend to see flash flooding in that case. Boy, do you really get some flooding in this, because I'm looking at the totals, guys. 3, 4 inches of rain already in some of these areas, and this is day 1 of what's going to be a long week of rainfall.
Right.
And remember, there's sometimes a delay in the flash flooding. This water's running off into ditches, drainage ditches. It's going into small creeks, bigger creeks and streams, and then lakes. That water takes time to move through the system. So some of the water will rise well after the rain stops as the water works its way to those larger tributaries. And again, the warning is up until 7:45. Here we are coming up at that time. So I don't suspect we'll see this extended. And the reason I say that, I've had no pictures, no videos of anything, and we've also got no damage reports. So as you guys mentioned, we're not seeing an uptick in power outages or anything like that, which is a good sign. But they just issued a warning for that storm behind it. So that is the second tornado warning.
Wow.
That's for the cell near Huntersville.
That's the one you were talking about earlier, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the one I was watching back to the southwest. So this is actually this is near Holbrook Road. This is just north of 485, by the way. This is a little bit closer to Huntersville, southeast side of Huntersville, Cox Mill area. Just not North Lake Mall is on the other side of 77. It's over in this area, but it's due east of North Lake Mall area. So think of that area. And this is heading towards the Highland Creek area, Skybrook area, those neighborhoods. You know, and basically we're Huntersville, was that Highway 73 there that goes between Huntersville and Concord. So it's just south of there and east of 77. So that's in that area just north of 485, west of 85, and east of 77. But that's the new rotation there near Huntersville. There's some kind of boundary or something setting up right there that's allowing these storms to rotate on that line, because this is the second cell behind it that is doing the same thing.
Well, explain what that would mean. Just a boundary there.
So if there's some kind of, maybe it's a warm front or something like in here, and what's happening, and when you get a boundary, what it does is the winds are coming from one direction here, they're coming from another direction here. So when a storm develops on that boundary, it can tap into that changing wind direction and cause it to rotate. We see this with sea breezes, we see this with stalled fronts, outflow boundaries. So that there's something there, because every storm that's tracked there has all of a sudden spun up enough that we've seen a warning issued. So there's certainly something going on there. And let's look at the velocity data, because this will show you what we're looking at. Remember the storm that's warned for up there? You barely see rotation, but this sticks out right away, right there. You'll all be experts on the red and greens now on the velocity data, because the third time today. So again, what you're looking at here, those reds are winds away from the radar. We're really close to the radar now, which is in Mountain Island Lake. So the winds are going that direction. So in between there on Holbrooks Road and south of Union Square Drive, there's some kind of rotation going on there. And because we're so close to the radar, that is only a couple 100 feet off the ground. So that is likely really close to where, look at that hook. Holy moly. That is definitely, you see the hook, the appendage right there near Holbrooks Road. That is definitely rotation right there.
Man, that's right over Northstone
right there.
Country Club and a bunch of other places too.
So this is a very populated area in here.
Yes.
A lot of neighborhoods in here. That one is even stronger than the first one. Holbrook Road is right there. Huntersville Concord Road, just west of Cox Mill. This area definitely, there's just a lot of people in the path. And this one definitely looks like a much better rotation than even the first two. Everyone that's come along has gotten a little bit stronger as they've moved through this area. So, these are areas right now it's probably just to the west of Skybrook. I would say, not too far from Easterfield. I guess it's Eastfield Road, just west of there, southwest of the Skybrook Golf Club.
Okay.
Just north of Highland Creek, so kind of in between there. If it continues up, you see that right there. I mean that
looks quite prominent.
You don't see that very often. And it's so prominent because it's close to the radar. So right there, that's the hook. There's a tornado possibly right there. I'm much more confident this might be closer, because the radar is right here, guys. So this is close to the ground. The radar is detecting that rotation very near the surface. And with the number of people up there, I'm waiting to see if we hear anybody seen or damage in that area. I've not seen any reports come in. Let's look at the velocity data. And again, you see the rotation right there. The reds are going this direction. The greens are going this direction. So right there, Holbrooks Road, Old Vermilion Drive, and Warfield Avenue. There's rotation right there. Tornado might be on the ground heading towards Huntersville Concord Road, and then just here, which is Ashbury Chapel Road, and then back towards, here's Skybrook over here. So it's heading towards Skybrook area right now.
Okay. And that, as you said, it's very populated right there. So heed these warnings, please, because obviously we're trying to give you enough time to get to those safe spaces right now.
Right. And just to reiterate the safe space, as Brad has said, put as many walls between you and the outside of your home. Mobile home is not a safe space. Obviously, Brad has mentioned this too. You don't want to be in the car driving to a safe place, but if you think you have time to maybe get to a grocery store or something that's going to be a structure with substance, probably advised.
It's a great call too, Brad, because a lot of individuals are looking right now where they should be at or where they should be going, heeding some of these warnings on hopefully on a device, an electronic device that they have right now as well.
Yeah, so this area, I've been to Skybrook many times, and just west of there, I forgot, that's Metrolina greenhouses. That's a huge area there. just west of the golf course. That's basically traveling right towards the Metroline greenhouses in that area. And as it moves northeast, it's eventually going to head towards Moss Creek. And then eventually, you know, if you've ever been to the Carolina Renaissance Festival, that's right up in that area where they do that. So you're not too far from those locations. And again, I'll put a storm track on that rotation couplet. We're going to track it off in this direction. And again, I know there's a lot of warnings today, but these have been 3 separate storms, not the same storm. So Cox Mill, Poplar Tent, and then North Concord between now and 8:30. This warning is actually up until 8:30 tonight as well. I'm just looking at, you know, I'm trying to track the number of homes and businesses in the path of that storm, and there's a lot.
There's a ton.
This is a really populated area that it's moving into. So the first warning is till 7:45, but the second warning to me, guys, is like we've seen earlier, the follow-on storm is the one that's producing the stronger rotation every time, and there it is. It's southwest of Huntersville Concord Road. Waiting for an update on the radar here. Let's loop this, and you can see the spin up right there. I mean, it's not often that you see rotation that strongly on the radar, but we do have it today right in that area. I'm going to turn off, what I'm going to do is going to turn off the other radar so we have a little clearer view. We'll turn off the Greer radar. So there we go. You actually almost have like a debris ball, it looks like, right there near Lock Raven Road.
Wow.
So that's the hook, that appendage coming out right in the middle of your screen, right there. That looks like a debris ball. It's close enough to the radar we might be detecting debris there. Debris ball means there's stuff being picked up by the rotation, and it's actually showing up on the radar. So the hook comes out, it's wrapped up, and then there's a tornado. It's right there on Lock Raven Road. Let me look at the other roads there. So that neighborhood, you know, Crystal Springs Drive, this is Roosevelt Grove Drive. It's on the ground now. Hopefully you're in shelter location, but if you live east of there and you know those roads I'm calling out, you need to be in your safe spot now. Interior room, away from those outside walls and windows. This is a real deal. You got to tell people in this area, if you have friends or family here, make sure they're in shelter now. Don't mess around with this storm. It's got a very strong indication on radar. This is about as clear cut on radar as you're going to see. Hopefully, this looks a lot worse on radar than it is, but we're so close to the radar is sampling this one much better than the other ones. Because I'm just going to show you how close it is to the radar. There's the radar right there. Okay? So radars are like cell phone towers. The closer you are to them, the better the service and signal. This thing's right close to there, so you're getting very, very good indication of rotation. When these storms get far from the radar, that's where it gets a little more wishy-washy. You're sampling bigger and taller parts of the storm, but not the lowest levels. Here, we're sampling all the way down to the ground. So we're getting that strong hook indication right there. And again, let's put a track on this because
we're still moving at 15 miles an hour, about 20 miles an hour?
Super slow,
okay.
Which I actually think is a good thing right now because it's given us time to warn people.
Right.
So again, let me erase that track real quick. Yeah, because normally, sometimes between volume scans, and again, when I'm talking about a volume scan is one scan of the radar. That takes about 1 minute, sometimes 30 seconds. I've seen it where in 30 seconds or a minute, the storm jumps, 5 miles. In this case, it's moving street by street. It's moving really slow, which is giving time for people to seek shelter. So this is Highway 73 between Huntersville and Concord. Poplar Tent's over here, Cox Mill right here. So here we go. Right in here, this is the Metroline greenhouses, and over there is where Skybrook Country Club is, or Golf Club. It's right there. It's heading in that direction. So Huntersville Concord Road, that's the area where it's going right now. And if it continues pushing northeast, it's going to head just northwest of 85, going up towards Concord, Kannapolis area for the third time today. But look at that. I mean, look at the hook. The hook is there because what's happening is the rain is wrapping around and curling up like that. And right at the very tip is where the tornado is. So that's why you get the hook on the reflectivity. The rotation is taking precipitation and hooking it around as it gets wrapped in. So let's look at the velocity data again. I'm going to pause this just for a second there. So I'm doing analysis as I'm talking to you. And the rotation is very strong on the velocity data as well, because look at the strong winds. Those are the strongest winds I've seen on the velocity data. If we sample that, we've got 34 mile-an-hour winds going away from the radar. And then over here, you've got winds going towards the radar around 7 to 10. That's not super strong going that way, but the 34 is the strongest one we've seen today. So it's at least a weak tornado. Could be stronger if it continues to strengthen as I'm looking at this.
This is our third warning, fourth warning of the evening? Fourth? Okay.
We've had that first one they did a couple warnings for, but it's the third storm.
Okay.
So the storms have had multiple warnings, but it's the third storm that has produced warnings today. I'm starting to get some flooding reports from Mooresville, by the way, on top of all this, and we kind of thought that was going to be the problem. Some water covering roadways up in the Mooresville area, because this is the third storm to hit them as well. So the rain has been a big part of it as well.
Is that flash flood warning still out there as well, Brad?
There was a flood advisory, but we have not seen any warnings yet, but that could be changing really quickly as this water begins to come up. Yeah, that rotation is really tight right now. I'm going to zoom in because this is just south of Huntersville Concord Road. It's kind of shocking it's moving so slowly. It's on that Loch Raven Road still. It's only moved maybe a couple blocks. There's another volume scan. So the radar just updated. It's still just east of Loch Raven Road. Here's Huntersville Concord Road, which goes north. And this is Pavilions Estate Drive. So it's kind of just south of there. If you're anywhere in these vicinity, you need to be in that safe spot. Grab your phone, take it with you, your safe spot, turn the TV up, whatever you're watching us on, and head to that shelter location right now. So that warning, again, is the newer one. Just getting a report from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Emergency Management. No damage reported so far at the comm center, so that's the good news. So fingers crossed that stays, because I do not like the looks of this on the radar.
And outages have not changed whatsoever either. Maybe data is still coming in, but around Huntersville, there's really nothing to write home about at this point.
I would definitely, of course, just heed Brad's warnings. Don't take any chances.
Right.
I mean, the delay could be there with getting that information in. Folks might be huddling in their homes. We don't know quite yet.
So true.
And, you know, as we talk about getting into the safe space, I've heard Brad point this out, and I feel like this is great advice. We talked about the helmet. Grab some shoes.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we're not wearing shoes when we're in our home.
Right.
But you don't know if there's going to be damage
or
or
debris. Yeah.
When you
never know.
leave your safe space.
Yep.
You don't want to step on a nail or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
First responders will tell you there's more injuries and unfortunately fatalities sometimes after the disaster because of stuff like that, fires, people driving into damaged roadways or floodwaters, or in this case, injuries from stepping on glass, nails, whatever. So yeah, if there is damage, you want to have shoes in there. And normally you're right, Vanessa, who has shoes on in their house, but maybe grab a pair when you go to your shelter location in case something bad. You know, we just mentioned no flood warning yet. I think I jinxed it because we just got a flood warning there. Flash flood warning now for northern Mecklenburg, southern Iredell County. That warning, let me see how long that warning goes. It's probably going to be a couple hours. Yeah, till 1:45 in the morning.
Wow.
So that's for Cabarrus, Iredell, Mecklenburg, and Rowan County till 1:45. And that's because this area, we mentioned this is the third warning. It's the third storm to go over the same spot. And with rainfall rates now over 2-3 inches per hour, we're getting flooding reports in the Mooresville area. So it's really that Mooresville, Cornelius, Davidson, Lake Norman area into southwestern Rowan. So the same area where we've seen the tornadoes, we've seen rainfall because, you know, even there hasn't been, even if a tornado didn't touch down, the rain has fallen. It's touching down. So it's causing huge issues. And again, that rotation as I zoom in. So now we're kind of near Autumn Crest Road, Huntersville Concord Road's here. We're getting some movement. So this area right in here, I believe this is over where the Metrolina greenhouses are right there. So it's getting very close to that. I have to look at the road for that one, but it's getting really close to that area right now as it moves off in that general direction.
And obviously the flooding is something we're going to be watching over the next couple of days, although we're focused on this tornado warning that we're seeing tonight.
I'm almost curious, I having covered a lot of hurricanes, just based on my background, I feel like when we talk about slow-moving storms, yes, it gives kind of a heads up, more lead time to get prepared, but it also seems to cause a lot of rainfall concerns because it gives more opportunity for a storm to kind of sit in one spot and drop rain. And I don't know, Brad, if that's something that you might be concerned about in this situation.
Yeah, because the low pressure system to our west that's causing all the rain in this rainy week is not going to move. So we're going to see these waves of rain. The only thing that was working in our favor was we are really dry up until this point. So there was some room for this water in the soil, the creeks and streams. But the problem is tonight we've had so many waves of storms in these small areas that it's overwhelmed the soil and the creeks and streams, and we're starting to see pretty much everything taken over and kind of overwhelmed right now. So that tornado warning is still in effect. And again, the rotation does not look like it's weakened all that much. If anything, it looks like about the same. Some of the winds in there are just as strong as they were earlier. So I'm not going to be surprised if this stays up for the whole time, and maybe additional warnings, because it doesn't look to be weakening or cycling nearly as much as the previous storm. And again, there's the rotation. Now the couplet is still there, but we don't have the kind of hook that we had earlier. It's just a very small one. But it's south of Huntersville Concord Road. This is 73, which goes all the way over to Huntersville and then goes all the way over towards Concord. So 73 is right there. So for everyone watching at home, this is just south of 73, but it's north of 485. East of Huntersville, pretty much equal distance from Cox Mill to Huntersville. So it's right there in between, not too far from Skybrook and Metrolina greenhouses. But it seems like it's going to pass just northwest of there, barely, maybe just northwest of there. The heaviest rain, though, is to the north, and that's why the flash flood warning is up Mooresville. I'll have to look at the rain gauges in Mooresville, but the radar estimates were of about 3 to 4 inches of rain in that area. So that's going to make it very problematic driving around or getting around. So it's probably better just to stay where you're at right now. Do not try to leave your home in that area because the flood waters are likely causing some issues. I'm looking at some of the rain totals up there. Davidson, 2.63 inches of rain already.
And we've had rounds of this. It's not been, constant.
And that's just today. That's since midnight. So that's right near the county line. So that's I have that reports. And then another report on the west side of Lake Norman, 3.12 inches of rain already.
Wow. So
that's a lot of rain in a short period of time, and more on the way, as Colin was mentioning. There's that rotation. The other thing I always want to keep an eye on, because we've had 3 of these today, storms behind it. Are they doing anything? And thankfully, none of the other storms back there show rotation like these first 3 did. So here's the rotation. It's heading towards the northeast. Trailside Road northwest, Grassy Creek Drive, Macaulay Road is right there, Sandy Bottom Drive northwest. So it's heading those directions, those neighborhoods on the north side of Skybrook. It looks like it's going to pass just north of there and then travel up here towards the reservoir. So as it gets closer to the reservoir, as it moves northwest, it's going to head back into Cabarrus County. So it's getting towards the Mecklenburg-Cabarrus County line. It's getting close. It's actually drifting north a little more. So, Huntersville Concord Road there, 73, those areas, that's where it seems to be setting up just south of there. And there's Odell Church Road, Shiloh Church Road there, and Rama Church Road off to the west. So those 3 roads all going that direction. It's traveling up from the southwest and should be there within the next 15 to 20 minutes based on its current speed. I'm just looking at the update to that flood warning. Again, that's till 1:45, so that's going to be a long duration warning. But the rotation is getting weakening a little bit, but we'll see if it cycles again. And you heard me mention earlier what cycling means is these storms will go through a phase where the storm will spin up and then it'll cycle out, and a new tornado or new rotational form and wrap around. Because what's going on here is this whole thing is rotating, and what happens to the actual rotation, we'll zoom in, is oftentimes the rotation here will get pulled into the updraft. It'll get what we call occluded, and it'll go away. It'll dissipate. And then a new rotation will form back here and rotate back around and take over, and you'll get a new tornado. So that happens quite a bit in these systems when they're cycling, we call it the mesocyclone. The whole thing is rotating, and the storms, the tornadoes will form below that and then rotate around it. And so oftentimes if you see the rotation weaken and you wonder, Brad, why are we still on the air? Or why are we still talking about a warning? Because we're waiting to see if it's going to recycle up and move back around the other way. Getting some reports now from the area, some funnel cloud reports. It looks like some of my spotters are sending me stuff on my phone, so I'm going to pull my phone up here. But it looks like maybe a brief funnel cloud in the Huntersville area. Thanks to Barry sending that in. I'm just looking at it. It does look like maybe a wall cloud and funnel cloud in that area. So that's in the right spot. That's the thing. If you can get spotter reports and radar and put those two together, you can piece together the information. So there definitely looks like there might have been at least a funnel cloud with this one. And I'm not surprised based on the rotation on the radar. The rotation is weakening, thank goodness. So we're seeing that rotation weaken quite a bit.
It's good to hear.
But the tornado warning is technically up till 8:30. Whether it'll last that long, we're getting back to the top of the hour. We'll see if it actually goes all the way until the top of the hour for that. Getting a lot more reports, guys, of flooding. Twitter feed's gone from funnel cloud reports to water, creeks, streams, all getting very high. So starting to see quite a bit of flood reports come in, which is something as we get closer to sunset, which is like after 8:30. Sunset tonight is 8:40, excuse me. So 8:40ish, we'll see the sunset. When things get dark, we don't want you driving into any standing water tonight because you don't know if those creeks have washed out the road, if the overpass is gone, if a culvert has kind of caused a sinkhole. So please do not drive into standing water. Turn around, don't drown, we say, for very good reason. Most fatalities with flooding occurs because people drive into water. So we do not want that to happen tonight. That's a whole nother threat that will continue to evolve, not just tonight, but over the next several days as we get into this week of day after day of these waves of storms that will cause flash flooding.
And I mean, we talked about the problems that could arise with campgrounds.
Right.
With what Brad has said, multiple days of rain, and just the concerns that we might see with flooding that just pops up like that.
Well, and this thing of training, right, where you see a storm or a couple different storms running over the same type of track in one area, and that's what we've seen for a big portion of today. And then you think about the rest of this week, if it's dropping 2 to 3 inches of rain an hour, we haven't even seen a constant deluge of rain, and we've seen almost 2 to 3 inches in some areas of northern Charlotte today.
Yeah, I think people can sometimes underestimate the power of water. Water is very powerful. It can move you. It can move a vehicle. This is why Brad says turn around, don't drown. And we alluded to this earlier in the evening where we unfortunately have had deaths in our area, just outside of our area, related to flooding.
Well, and then once you're stuck, right, those services are there to help you, but it detracts from other services that maybe those law enforcement or fire might be helping or rescuing other individuals, especially when we see numerous storms. I think this is our third warning we've seen already this evening. So this may not continue. It sounds like things may dissipate a little bit, but you never know which way it's going to go when we have volatile weather like this.
Yeah, and so really just a great time to remind folks as we are setting up for possibly multiple days of this, that you have the WCNC Charlotte mobile app. It's got the radar, it's got the forecast. We send you push alerts if something serious is coming your way. And then we talk about the importance of damage reports as well, and we have
the near me
with that.
Yeah, and then the near me feature, obviously you can take a photo, you can put it in, and then it tells you, or it gives you a location as to where you're at. It pops up, you can pull it up. I'm even on it right now. Somebody actually gave us some rain coming down at 7:33. Allison Newton, credit to her. And man, just a deluge of rain, street flooding. A credit by KK sent in. So we're actually able to access this, put them on air, but it also tells us a little bit about where you're at and what you're seeing.
Yeah, and just like how you're able to access it, your neighbors can access it.
That's true.
You're letting your neighbors know what you're seeing and maybe areas to avoid. So it's just so very helpful for telling the story. And we'll just, of course, remind you, safety first.
Yes, please.
Don't go out, especially for that area east of Huntersville. We're not saying to go out right now and get video.
Right.
Please don't. Stay in your safe space.
Right.
But we do appreciate after the storm passes.
If you could show us what you're seeing.
Getting the damage reports.
Yeah, and we did have a camera man, Tony Gutowski, I think, who's up there driving, and he had said a little bit earlier, if you are headed out, not in the northern part of the area, but around the area, we've seen storms. They have been dropping a lot of rain. You're going to see ponding. You're going to see just a lot of water on the roadways. So that's something to keep in mind as you're headed out if you do have to go out tonight.
Yeah, if you are stuck in a huge deluge all of a sudden, there's no pride lost to pull over. You know,
he said he had to do that, right?
Right. Be safe.
Can't see.
If you can't see, you can't see, and you don't want other people to not be able to see you. I know we have very, specific opinions here in this newsroom about flashers. Some people have, just pull over, please.
Right.
And yes, put the flashers on when you are stopped.
All right, so as we said, we've seen numerous warnings. Watching this one right now, Brad, any updates? Are we seeing it dissipate a little bit or lose its strength?
The good news is I'm not seeing it get stronger, but the concern is we've seen this cycling pattern today, and what I mean by that is, the storm will weaken and then new circulation will form. So I still see rotation here, and the rotation is just south of 73. It's amazing how slow these are moving, because typically you see them racing across our area. These things are barely moving. I can almost go street by street sometimes, and the next volume scan, it hasn't moved all that much. So right now the circulation is on Macaulay Road. It's south of Trailside Road. It's south of 73. It's heading north. So River Farm Boulevard, this is north of 73 now. So those areas north of 73, that's the area that we're going to start focusing on. 73 is, those areas north of like Moss Creek, not too far. I mean, I know this area right here. The Carolina Renaissance Festival is right off of 73 in this area. So if you've ever been to the Renaissance Festival, this is really close to where this rotation is. It's not too far away. Harris Road Middle School is over in this area as well, so it's not too far away. Traveling northeast, so this is going to move eventually into solidly, I should say, all the way into Cabarrus County. So the Cabarrus County, Mecklenburg County line is right there. So the rotation is on the Mecklenburg County side. It's going to cross over there's Moss Plantation Avenue, cross over probably 73, right where it meets up. So if you know where 73 is, where it meets up right with the Mecklenburg-Cabarrus County line, that's where this is heading in the next 10 minutes. And if you live northeast of there, those are all the neighborhoods that are northeast of that intersection. That's where the rotation is going, if it holds together. I'm seeing signs of weakening, but it's still clearly there. And as long as that continues to be there, you're going to have that. So Odell School Road, and then areas around Moss Creek, that is basically where it's at right now, right in that vicinity. And it's traveling northeast at just 10 miles per hour, so it's not racing very quickly. We'll do an updated storm track on it all the way to the northeast. And you can see Fishertown, 836, Kannapolis, that's a long ways away, 843, and Landis at 854, if it holds together that whole time. It's been cycling, going through signs of weakening or strengthening. I'm going to zoom in all the way on the rotation because it's right there. Huntersville Concord Road, there's Bradford Lane. This is, what is this over here? Pavilion Estates Drive is on the west side of the circulation, and then Wild Olive Drive is on the east side of the circulation. That's where the circulation is. So if you're there now, hopefully you're already in your shelter location because it's right over you. But what we're watching for is if you're north and east of there. So you name those roads, hopefully people know where those are in relation to their house northeast of 73. These neighborhoods now are the ones we need to watch for potentially that rotation moving in. And again, the warning is still up for another 24 minutes as it moves northeast. So if this continues moving northeast, it's going to cross over Odell School Road, head towards the reservoir, and then go towards Kannapolis Parkway as it goes into the western, kind of the western sections there of Cabarrus County. Just there, kind of northwest of 73, where 73 and Kannapolis Parkway kind of meet up right there. Stewart Haas Racing, in that area, just right there, the shops there. This is going to travel just northwest of there. So the area I'm talking about is right over in here. So western part of the county. So Kannapolis is right here. The track of this would take it in Kannapolis in about, at this slow speed, we're probably talking 840-ish. So if I'm in Kannapolis right now, pay attention to this. This thing holds together. It's going to be heading your way. But it's moving so slow that we've had time to warn people. It's not moving at that, breakneck speed where the warning comes out, and by the time I tell you where it's at, it's already moved 5-10 miles. That's not the case here. Let's go back to the velocity data. And good signs. Good sign. It's not getting stronger. The rotation is still there. We still have reds going this way. Again, remember the reds are the winds going away from the radar in this direction. The greens are going towards. The lighter the colors are, the weaker the winds are. The brighter they get, then you're getting into these blues and these yellows. That would be really strong circulation. The fact that they're staying in the red greens mean they're low wind speeds at least. So whatever's circulating is really small. And it's right there. Macaulay Road and Huntersville Concord Road is pretty much the intersection it's at. but traveling towards some pretty big neighborhoods right here, just in the Moss Creek Middle School area, and then traveling towards 73. That seems to be the area that it's going to next. And
we're getting videos, a lot of videos and photos of not necessarily the storm clouds that we're seeing out there in this tornado warning, Brad, but the after effects, the flooding that people are seeing. You were saying earlier that the water levels rise most often after the storm has passed, which is what people are seeing.
Yeah, like a trickle-down effect.
Right.
He was saying,
right.
As it kind of feeds in through all of the waterways and eventually make their way down towards the final.
Yeah, so we appreciate those looks as well.
Yeah. We are, speaking of which, getting some great videos in via Near Me, so thank you, everyone, sending those in. We are seeing some coming from High Rock Lake, Harris Road Middle School, seeing a little bit of debris over in the Cornelius area. So once again, safely continue to send those in to us. We're going to try our best here to turn these around quickly and kind of share them on TV. But in the meantime, the Near Me feature, you can check these out right now and kind of see what's happening in your neighborhood. Yeah,
and probably the best way, if you know somebody lives in the area, we've talked about this, and we're continuing to kind of talk about this throughout the evening, text, call any people that you know, or text them if they are in this area or ahead of this storm, because that's sometimes the best way to get that confirmed to those people that need to hear that stuff.
Yeah, and just to reiterate too, while we have folks' attention, I mean, obviously we've talked about all the warnings that have come out today, but we are expecting more rain as we go on throughout the week. So just keep that in the back of your mind. We do have days we would like you to be weather aware coming up. Primarily, I know Brad has talked about this is more of a flooding concern initially. Obviously, the tornado warnings have spun up, but know now, you can prepare now, and then be safe later.
Well, you had asked this question before. The probability of seeing a tornado today, I think, was around 1%.
Yeah, and that's what Brad was saying, like, the low probability, but it
just never know, right?
Can still happen.
Yeah, we have a saying, severe thunderstorms can produce tornadoes with little or no warning. That's the definition of any severe thunderstorm. So sometimes we wait for the tornado warning, but if you have a severe thunderstorm, you can sometimes see these tornadoes spin up. And today's kind of a unique setup. We had some kind of boundary in the area that allowed for these storms to spin up. The outflow boundary from one storm might have interacted with the other, but it's been a weird setup. The rain, though, is becoming a bigger issue, and I don't want to downplay that because we have not seen damage as that I have seen yet. All of my spotters, all of our social media, I have not seen any damage from tornadoes, but I'm starting to see a lot of flooding video, and I know you guys just mentioned this. That's starting to make me a little more concerned because some of these areas are being repeatedly hit, and this is just the beginning. And flooding is one of those things that definitely impacts a much larger segment of the population. Remember that tornado, if that tornado was on the ground, that thing's maybe half a football field wide, if that. That's a very narrow area. This flooding is going to affect whole counties or parts of counties. So it's going to be a much bigger area impacted by the flooding. So the flash flood threat is going to be huge this week, and that's why we want you to stay weather aware tomorrow, on Wednesday, and Thursday, because all 3 of those days we're going to see more of these storms. Probably not the tornadoes, thank goodness, but we're probably going to see a lot more flooding because the ground is going to be absolutely saturated from these previous storms. So we're going to stay on with this tornado warning until it expires or until I know for sure this thing is done cycling, and we can't say that right now because of the rotation still showing in there. It's very weak, but it's still there. And what we're waiting for is this thing we're going to give it a couple scans. It's moving so slow, it's taking a little bit longer to see if it's going to cycle and a new rotation is going to form. But as I mentioned that, as we wait to see if that thing cycles back up, look at some of these rainfall totals. You want to know why there's a flash flood warning effect? Look at these totals. So this is right on the Iredell-Rowan County line, 4.6 inches of rain in and around Mooresville. Over towards Lake Norman, we're in the 4 to 5 inch range. Cornelius, we're approaching about 1.5 on the south side, 2.5 on the north side, and then northwest Cabarrus County, 3.2. So this is just rain that has fallen since midnight. If we get more rain, and we will, the next couple of days, it will not take as much rain now to cause flash flooding. That's the thing about these setups. It takes less rain to cause flooding every day after today because of the rain that's falling right now.
Folks who have been in our area for a few years will remember, lives that we have lost because of flash flooding. I do remember in 2020, November, there was the Hidden Night Campground. This is in Alexander County. Sadly, 5 people died, a 1-year-old included. And just to kind of highlight the importance of having a way to get information in an emergency, from what we heard from folks there, they didn't know that this was coming.
Yeah,
and it's sad.
And it's tough. It's tough to pinpoint, right, when you're going to be out in the wilderness when a storm like this pops up. So, I have to always try and keep yourself ready. Transistor radio to have. Obviously, a cell phone is probably one of the best opportunities to link you to social media, to a broadcast like this, or just to get those notifications. That buzzing sound. It's so loud, and you know what it's for. But those are the way to get those warnings. If you don't have a way to do that, you can find yourself in a life-threatening situation.
Yeah, for our WCNC Charlotte mobile app, you can enable push notifications and be sure we're not going to be bombarding you with every single
breaking
headline that comes in. Although you can choose, the degree of notifications you want, but the really life-threatening stuff, you want to get that. So once again, that WCNC Charlotte News app, you can get it for iPhone, you can get it for Android. It's in all the places where you get your apps.
That's right. And I was seeing another viewer talk about, Brad was already on Roku, so you can get us on almost any device that you may have nowadays. So, Brad, obviously watching this storm continually, and somebody was asking a little bit about programming. We'll get back to that at some point, but we want to make sure the threat is over, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to wait until this threat is past us completely. We've only got a couple, 15 minutes left in this warning. We'll probably ride this out to the bottom of the hour. I'm not seeing any signs that we're going to see this warning canceled early, and just because we've seen it kind of dissipate and reform, but I think they're going to keep the warning up here for a little bit. If it does get canceled, obviously we'll go right back to programming, but the flash flood threat is starting to increase. So while the tornado threat will go down tonight, and it will, this will likely be the last one. Especially as we're getting closer to sunset, we're losing the heating of the day, which helped fuel some of these severe thunderstorms. The flood threat is going to increase. We're starting to see more storms develop around this low pressure system, and flash flooding is going to become a big issue for the next, I'd say, 3 days. You could see some of the totals. We've seen the flash flood warning already in effect for areas around Mooresville. They've seen anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain just today. That doesn't even include the rain that's on the way. So that flash flood warning is in effect right now. And you could see, it's kind of hard to see because the tornado warning obviously takes precedent over the flood warning currently, but there is a flood warning for northern Mecklenburg, southern Iredell, southwest Rowan, and northwest Iredell, essentially the area we've been tracking tornadoes throughout the afternoon. We'll go back to the circulation here. There is weak circulation now crossing the county line from Mecklenburg into Cabarrus. So there's Shiloh Church Road, there's 73. It's about crossing there. It's taking forever. There's Raven Cross Lane, Odell School Road right there, Trinity Church Road over here, and then this is Highway 3 to the north. So give you some perspective on where it's at. That circulation is still pretty broad right there. Chatting with the Weather Service, they're going to leave the warning up for now because they do think it's cycling. And because we're so close to the bottom of the hour, we're 14 minutes away from the expiration of this warning. So probably safer bet is just to leave this warning up in case it does cycle back up, because the worst thing could happen is the warning goes away, people think it's canceled, then the warning gets issued again. It becomes a really confusing communication aspect, especially for people's phones that are going off in this area for flash flooding and now tornadoes. So that severe thunderstorm it's producing the tornado is going to continue tracking northeast at a very slow speed. We didn't even mention, we mentioned how slow it was for the tornado, but remember, that slow movement is also affecting the rainfall. 10 miles per hour is not a very fast moving storm, so it's allowed to dump a ton of rain in a short period of time. It's been easier to track the tornado because it gives us lead time, but unfortunately that downside to that slow movement is the heavy rainfall, which is then going to produce flash flooding. So we're starting to see a little bit of a cycling here, and the strong winds are wrapping back around. The first indication that you're getting a cycling is that you're usually going to see what we're seeing on the radar right here is, whoops, let me load that back up again, is you're going to start to see the backside of the storm rotate again and produce the rear flank downdraft, which is the wind coming out of the back of the storm. And what we're seeing is strong winds starting to come out of the backside of the storm here. This indication, this will wrap around. That's the first indication that that might be cycling, because what happens is that curls back around, the inflow notch comes in, and it starts spinning back up. So when you see that big area of green show up there, that is, at least from a structural standpoint of the storm, that it might be starting to spin up another rotation. Now, whether it will be a tornado or not, we'll wait and see, but that's why the warning is going to stay up here we'll go back to the radar. It's getting rain wrapped too, which the other part of this, you're not going to see this at all. Don't go out there and try to take pictures of this or video for many reasons. One, it's pouring rain, there's wind, the visibility is horrible. So stay away from going outside anywhere in this area. Get to the middle of the home. Love getting pictures of people with their helmets on and their safe spots. That's what we want to see. We definitely want to see people doing that. When this warning is canceled, I will give you the all clear, but for right now, I want you to stay in your spot. Just got an update from the Weather Service as well about the overnight flash flood risk. We can get to that, but that's going to be an issue tonight. After this warning goes away, the tornado warning, flash flooding is going to become an issue overnight. So we're going to want you to stay weather aware. Keep the phone charged up. I think Colin mentioned this a couple times about charging this thing up. Tonight's a night where you better make sure this thing is fully charged. Keep the volume on, because overnight there might not be tornado warnings, but it might be flash flood warnings. So if you live in a flash flood prone area, especially near creeks and streams, you might hear this go off tonight for flash flooding. And the nice thing about our app is that you can grab it and watch immediately and see what's going on with that link and see what's happening. But right now, the concern is this tornado warning, and it's converting pretty quickly into a flash flood threat. There's that rotation, still on the county line. It has not moved much. It's right on the Cabarrus-Mecklenburg County line, shifting northeast. It's north now of Huntersville Concord Road. There's 73, Moss Plantation Avenue right there. So it's traveling north. Shiloh Church Road is right here, so it's heading towards Shiloh Church Road. Here is 3 up here. This is Highway 3. And again, it's traveling up into the northeast. Kannapolis is right here on the edge of your screen. So Kannapolis is right here. This is the west side of Kannapolis, down towards the southwest of there. I'll widen it out so you can see it. Let's go to that Kannapolis camera real quickly. I'll kind of show you what it looks like. And we can see it's pouring there right now. Can't even see anything. So this is if you were trying to go see if you could see the rotation, this is kind of the view that you would have. You would not be able to tell. And what happens is there could be rotation there, just like a wall of rain heading at you, and that's why it's dangerous. So just stay off the road, stay inside in this area until this storm passes. This is definitely not something you want to be out in right now. And there's cloud-to-ground lightning, which, is just as dangerous to be out and about.
Now, you mentioned rotation, Brad. I mean, it's important to note for folks, we're not just getting the radar indications. We've also gotten funnel cloud video, funnel cloud pictures. So just thank you again for folks who have been able to send that to us. I know that we had a video from Davidson from Anderson, who sent this video, which, by the way, it looks like it's been sped up a little bit.
Yeah.
But you can kind of see right there. Do you see it?
Oh, yeah.
Like at the very bottom, that kind of funnel forming.
Yeah, and there's you can definitely see that. Yeah, and that's maybe what Brad was showing us on the radar about 30 minutes ago, when that cell, which seems to be now not necessarily dissipating, but it's kind of moving away from the area that it was affecting and impacting. So interesting to see both, on the radar, and then from somebody to see this where they're at as well. This is the Near Me feature that we've been talking about. You can go and check this out on WCNC.com as well. Seeing a lot of people, relating back to flooding in their yards and just rivers starting to swell. Again, this is not going to be the last day that we're going to have issues like this. So please send us your photos, your videos. Just click the Near Me inside our WCNC mobile app, or you can go online as well, WCNC.com, and that way we can see where you're at and what you're dealing with as well.
Yeah, this app is very helpful too with getting alerts. Not to say that we want to be dealing with any of this right now, but I will say it seems to be a bit of a blessing that it's daytime hours. We still have daylight. People are able to see this stuff. I know when we get into overnight hours and it gets dark and people are sleeping, that's a problem. And Brad mentioned that flooding could be a problem for folks overnight. Yeah, and
we're starting to see that flood threat really go up, guys. Good news. I mean, Weather Service just sent me a message, and they're going to expire this tornado warning. So the tornado warning will officially expired at 8:24, which is pretty much right now. Started to get some pictures in from Metroliner greenhouse area where we're talking about of what looks like a funnel cloud in that area. So it kind of confirms what we were seeing on radar. But one of the worries we have overnight is that we're starting to see flash flooding become a big issue. So even though the tornado warning is expired, we still have these flash flood warnings, which are going to be a big issue going into the overnight hours. And we're going to want you to take precautions from those as well, because these are the type of situations where the water can come up very, very quickly. So flash flooding is going to become a big issue overnight and for the next couple of days. We want you to stay weather aware. The Weather Prediction Center is already monitoring our area for potentially flash flooding overnight. For that reason, leave your phone on with the volume up. Make sure you charge it up completely. Just got a flood advisory coming in for Mecklenburg County as well. So I expect that'll be what your phone will be going off for most of tonight. We got a flood advisory for Mecklenburg County and a flash flood warning for the northern part of the county up towards the Mooresville area. So expect to see more of those pouring in during the overnight hours. But the good news is the tornado warning has expired. Our flood threat is going to continue to be an issue, though, guys, over the next 3 or 4 days.
Okay. Thank you, Brad, for all those updates. We're going to, of course, keep you posted as any new updates come in, any new warnings or alerts that you need to know about.
Right.
And then, once again, also, you can get any updates through our app, all the places online that you follow us. Especially
we go into the morning, into the overnight hours as well. And anything else that we need to break in for, we will make sure that we do it to try and keep you at home safe. But for now, thanks for joining us. We'll be back here at 11 o'clock.